Right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Katie Wysocki. I'm the director of the Career Enrichment Network. Thank you for joining us again for the Alumni Career Conversation on nonprofits and social services. We have a great panel of alumna with us to tell about their experience and give helpful advice for you seeking a career in a similar journey. So to kick us off, we'll introduce everyone who's with us. And then we'll go into some of the logistics. So I am going to introduce my colleague, Sharon Nichols, who is the Global Experience Coordinator here in the Career Enrichment Network, and she will introduce our panelists today. Sharon?
Yes, hello everyone. Yes, I have the honor of getting to introduce everybody. So our first alumni here is Amy Lund. Amy received her Bachelor of Science degree from Penn State, where she majored in psychology with a minor in deafness and hearing studies. During her time at Penn State, she was involved in Thon, Relay for Life, and Phi Sigma Pi. After graduating, Amy worked at the American Cancer Society as a community development manager and then transitioned to the Alzheimer's Association as a development manager. In these roles, she worked on many top-performing events in the country. Currently, Amy is the Rare Disease Impact Manager at Uplifting Athletes and is currently responsible for managing a variety of programs that support the rare disease community. And then we have Cheyenne Mack. Cheyenne Mack is currently completing the Master in Public Policy program here at Penn State, focusing on crime policy. She is a Penn State alumna, graduating in 2020 with her undergraduate degrees in psychology and criminology. During her gap year between undergraduate and graduate school, Cheyenne served with AmeriCorps in their City Year program. And finally, we have Sarah Woods. So Sarah L. Woods, Esquire, is privileged to serve as the co-president and CEO of Heights Philadelphia, a nonprofit educational organization that transforms the pathways to college and career for low-income, first-generation to college Black and Brown students. Heights Philadelphia is the merger of Philadelphia Futures and Stepping Stone Scholars. Sarah served as the president and CEO of Philadelphia Futures for 5 years prior to the merger. Sarah previously served as Executive Director of Philadelphia VIP, a nonprofit that recruits, trains, and supports lawyers who volunteer to help low-income Philadelphians tackle critical legal problems. Sarah also was the Director of Public Interest Careers and Pro Bono Programs at Villanova University School of Law. She began her legal career as a public interest lawyer representing survivors of domestic violence at Delaware County Domestic Abuse Project and Philadelphia's Women Against Abuse Legal Center. Sarah served as president of the Board of Directors of Access Matters, which works to equalize access to sexual and reproductive health care for teens and adults in need, and on the advisory board of the Crime Victims Law Project. She previously served as an adjunct professor at Villanova University's School of Law, where she created and taught a public interest lawyering course. She has been a volunteer leader for Women's Way, Community Legal Services, and New Directions for Women. She's an active alumni volunteer with Penn State, participating in the College of Liberal Arts Mentor, Law Careers, and Women in Leadership programs, and serving as an alumni admissions interviewer for the Schreyer Honors College. Sarah is a proud graduate of Penn State, Villanova University School of Law, and Villanova University. So very impressive alumni here today. Thank you all so much for being here, and we're so excited to hear more from you today.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So just a little housekeeping. So students, you are welcome to use the Q&A to ask any questions you may have. I will kick it off today. However, please feel free to have a voice and ask questions of our panelists as we move forward. And I will keep an eye on that, as will Sharon, as well as the chat. We are recording, and this will be appearing on our YouTube channel, along with most of our online events. You can find them on the Penn State College of Liberal Arts. We have a channel, Career Enrichment Network, there for you to access that, and we will pull up that link and get it in the chat here for you here soon. So just to kick us off, again, thank you for all being here. As you can imagine, our student population really wants to make a difference, and many of them are attributing that value to their career and their future career. How did that influence you as a student here at Penn State, and what advice would you have for them in their engagement as a current student? Amy, you are first on my screen. Not everyone needs to respond, but I can start with you if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. I think when I went to Penn State, I was super involved in Relay for Life and Thon, and I loved like the fundraising aspect. I loved giving back to charities, and I think you're already kind of making that first step of like knowing that nonprofits careers exist. That was not something that I realized, I think, until I was pretty late into my senior year of college, and realized that like there are people that run these organizations. I think in terms of like some advice I would give is really researching the nonprofits that you're looking into working for. You want to make sure that their missions and their values align with what your missions and values are. I don't think that every person needs a specific personal connection to that exact cause in order to be passionate about it. But I think a lot of people who go into nonprofits are passionate, and you want to make sure that those missions, those core values of that organization are really aligning with what you feel like your values are as well. And I think that helps you find the right environment for you.
For sure. Thank you. Diane or Sarah, would you like to add to that? Sarah, I saw you come off mute.
No, Cheyenne, please go ahead. And I'm happy to jump in.
Okay, I just really briefly wanted to say, I'm involved in Line Ambassadors on campus, and I was involved in the criminal justice restorative initiative in undergrad too. And I think ultimately working in nonprofits or being involved in public service is about caring for people and wanting to help people. And you could see that being extended in a bunch of different ways, and sort of channeling that energy when you're looking into your career. I think it's important to kind of understand, like Amy was mentioning, like, what are you passionate about? What do you like to do? And finding positions that make the most sense to you. And for me, I wasn't sure where that was just yet, which is why one of the reasons why I ultimately took a gap year, and I was able to sort of understand and decide that maybe policy was what I wanted to do. And that's where I could see my energy and being an active servant and helping communities, sort of my energy going towards that career path. So I think it's important to understand, who you are and what you want to do. And I think, if you're being involved in public service, you want to help others, and it's just sort of figuring out how do you want to help others?
I don't have much to add. That was fantastic. The one thing I would say is I recognize that service, there is a privilege in being able to serve, right? And that's both our own privilege and the privilege of working with clients. And sometimes that's difficult to do if you're paying for school yourself and you're working a part-time job. So I think the thing I would, suggest for the students who are on this call and who watch this later, is where can you show those transferable skills, whether it's in your service work, if you're able to do that, or in your part-time job. Where have you gone the extra mile? Where are you showing a commitment? Where are you showing your ability to manage time? Those are all things that'll be helpful to you in a nonprofit or for-profit career.
Absolutely. Thank you all. And as a career coach, we are working with students always to get internships and gain experience outside the classroom. But as Cheyenne mentioned, and I've been fortunate enough to be a part of Cheyenne's higher education career at Penn State when she started, all of those engagements are helpful in leading you to this point. And it's not just something that's tagged as an internship that has value and meaning. It's something that influences you. It's something that broadens your communication skills and engages in your event planning or problem solving or analytical skills. So all of those things are beneficial to you as an individual. I apologize to the person that's asking about closed caption. I don't think that was turned on initially, so I will do my best to see if I can find that. It will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can turn the closed captioning on there to have that come across. So I do apologize for that, but we'll work on seeing if I can get that added. Please, again, for our students, please feel free to share any questions in the Q&A as we go. So a lot of times I kind of picked that off there with my comment on the last question, but what liberal arts skills are you seeing that are most valuable to you in your current career and your current stages of what you've been through to get where you are? I hate to call on people. Sarah, you look ready to go.
Sure. I'm always at it. We can always tag team, right? One of the wonderful benefits of a liberal arts education is just the ability to think and analyze problems, right? So that big picture approach certainly comes in handy now in my work. The ability to think about problems from different perspectives. Again, that is something I value and hold dear for my time at Penn State, and that has helped me throughout all of my jobs. So I'll stop there because I know Cheyenne and Amy have lots more to add.
Yeah, I think the critical thinking skills that you gain from a liberal arts degree are just so helpful. I work with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. A lot of my colleagues are actually like former athletes and went into the NFL. And although that they went and got their college degrees while they played sports in college, like it definitely was a different experience. So I think that kind of like well-rounded background of the different perspectives that you're able to get help you work with the population of people that you're going to work with and your constituents, but also your colleagues and your mentors and your bosses. A lot of people come from different backgrounds into nonprofits. I don't think there's one path that I've seen anyone take. So being able to like build those relationships and those type of skills and relationship skills have been really important to building up my career and my network as well.
Yeah, I think adaptability was one of the first ones that came to mind for me. I think the really cool thing about the liberal arts college is that you take all these very different classes and you gain critical thinking skills and you gain a lot of transferable skills where you don't have to end up in one kind of clear cut career. You can kind of go from one career to the next. And that's the nice thing about, public service and nonprofit is that you can work with one type of like nonprofit org and go to a completely different one, but you're still utilizing the same core skills that you gained in your undergraduate career. So I think you learn to be very adaptable depending on the classes that you take and, the organizations you're a part of and sort of all of those experiences that you're able to have during your time at Penn State. So adaptability was the first kind of word that came to mind for me.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Question on considering many of our students are interested in knowing about further education, and I know you're finishing up your master's program, and Sarah, you went on to get multiple degrees, including a JD. What do you see as, for considering management or leadership executive roles in nonprofits and service? I've also seen an MSW can be helpful at times. Where would your advice be in that very broad scope of nonprofits and in service in suggesting higher education, and if that's something to do right away?
I feel like I should go first. I think that when you decide you want to go into higher education, it shouldn't just be because you need it. It should be because it's something that you're very interested in pursuing and it's in a topic or a career that you're really passionate about. Like I mentioned, I took a gap year, so I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to go directly into graduate school or if I wanted to do it after my gap year. And when I served with AmeriCorps, I learned a lot about education policy and urban development policy. And that sort of solidified my desires to continue pursuing higher education with the master's program, because I knew I was really interested in helping people, and I felt that policy was the best way for me to do it. So I knew that taking the break was definitely necessary. Not everyone needs to take a gap year, but I'm always big, like, yes, advocate, do it if you do, because it gives you a nice break from school, and you get opportunities to kind of decide exactly what you want to do, whether it's you're working, doing internships, traveling, whatever you need to do. But I knew that I wanted to go back to school and pursue something that I was passionate about, and that gave me really great skills to kind of continue into the sort of job field and the industry that I was really passionate about.
I totally echo what Cheyenne just shared. I also took time off before getting my JD and think that's so beneficial. It's expensive to go get another degree, and it's expensive just to get the undergrad degree. So being really careful and thoughtful about that makes sense. And for me, I needed that extra time to be 100% sure. So totally agree, Cheyenne. Katie, you asked about sort of what degree. I would hire a social worker any day of the week. You know, they are that the MSW in my line of work has come in super, super handy. As a CEO, if I could do it all over again, while the law degree was certainly helpful, an MBA is actually the degree I'd probably like plus one to, the finance, the strategy, the accounting pieces are things that I sort of learned on the job. And I find that that's really helpful in a leadership role to have. So.
Thank you for that. Amy?
Yeah, I think I took 3 years off before I went back to go get my master's, and I received my master's in higher education administration. So it was a little bit of a decision during the pandemic of not sure exactly what I wanted to do, which I think a lot of people felt, whether you guys are still in high school and not sure what to do with the pandemic, but it definitely helped align with kind of what I wanted to do. A lot of our roles work with a lot of collegiate students and a lot of collegiate student athletes. So kind of understanding that aspect of it a little more. But I think taking time off was definitely really helpful for me. And I was not ready at all to go back to school after graduating from Penn State. So it definitely took time for me to figure out what I was interested in. I wanted to be able to give myself options to know that if I didn't want to stay in the path of nonprofits that I originally chose, that there'd be some more options for me career-wise. But I definitely agree with Sarah. It's a big financial decision. And so taking that time to really plan that out and give myself a little wiggle room in my finances to be able to work full-time and go to school was definitely something that I needed to figure out before I made that jump.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. I think that's a great message for everyone to hear, that it's okay to do that and take that time, and it is expensive. And, obviously Sharon and I and the other career coaches in the office are always willing to have those conversations individually with each student to talk about your particular plan and needs and what options are available in those gap years to make them fruitful for you as well. So thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you the question of, what do you love about the work you do? As you can imagine, I'm then going to ask you what you don't love or what your frustrations are. So I'll start with the positive, but what do you love about what you do or intend to do?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick that off. I love nonprofit work. It was something that I knew that once I figured out that it could be a career, I knew I was going to be in that field. I have been mostly in the healthcare nonprofit sector, and I've really found that I love interacting with our constituents and our community. Right now, I work with the rare disease community, and it's full of just so many incredible people and incredible stories, and just the way that I can help make a small difference in their journey has really just driven me every day. And I think once you kind of find that community that you're so passionate about helping, it just makes every day like worth the work and worth getting up and getting all those, sending a lot of cold emails and cold calls. And but it really pays off when you're starting to get yeses and hearing from those families and getting to interact with them. And that's something that I love being able to do every day.
Thank you. Great. Diane, do you want to share your experience with AmeriCorps and also your intentions? Thanks.
Yeah. I think when I served with AmeriCorps, it really helped solidify that I really love helping people and educating people. Currently, and when I was an undergrad, I was a Lion ambassador. So giving tours and educating people and sort of helping them make that really big decision on where they wanted to go to college is something I've always been passionate about, and kind of doing that, but in a different way with AmeriCorps, and being able to be a tutor and mentor to 7th and 8th graders was really fun. And though my path isn't leading me to being a teacher, it taught me that, you know, being able to help others and getting to interact with people, you know, Amy kind of touched on that, being passionate about a community or a group of people and helping them, I think is really important and kind of guides you into what you want to do when you decide to, you know, apply for jobs and find the best career for you. And now that I'm applying for jobs and going through that process with the public policy degree, I've learned that it's sort of reinforcing it again, like this is the decision that I wanted to do. I've made the right choice. And now it's just figuring out which community I want to help, because I love helping people so much that it's like narrowing down to that specific group. And I think that's a good thing, is that you're not sort of narrow-minded in the sense that you just want to do one specific thing, but you can sort of expand your options. And again, just going back to having the adaptability to do so is something that the liberal arts college really does prepare you for. So just kind of figuring out who I want to help and where I want to help them at. But I think, you know, being with AmeriCorps and being involved in organizations on campus sort of prepares you for that decision.
I love that. Ditto, right? I love the work that we do. I love the students that we work with. I love my colleagues. That is, you know, folks who are drawn to this work are drawn to it because of a passion. So it's so many great things about it. I also feel really strongly and drawn to this work because I feel deeply that we are all better off for doing this work, that it's not about charity, that it's about purpose, and it's about pushing systems to be better for everyone. We definitely feel that at Heights, and so that is really what keeps me going every day, that we are that our work matters because everyone deserves a great education and to go to a great school and to have opportunities, you know, out there for them. So, yep, great work.
Thank you. Okay, flipping the table. What about the frustrations and how do you handle the, you know, I know in nonprofit work and just service work that we hit barriers of financial support or things just not working out or not working collaboratively with others as we intended. What are some things you've seen? What is some advice you would give for those students who are contemplating that career and how you manage those when things don't go the way you anticipate?
I can go first. I think the one thing I've learned, especially being with AmeriCorps, is being patient. I think when people go in, you know, into nonprofits and public service, you want to make an impact and you want to help people. And sometimes that isn't something that you will see immediately. Sometimes it does take a year, 5 years, 7 years before you're really able to see that gradual change. And I know I'm a very impatient person. So sometimes I'm like, I do something and I'm like, okay, I really want to see this change. And that happened when I was with AmeriCorps and, you know, working with students. Sometimes they don't pick up on all the skills that you want them to. And it takes time. It took months before they were able to sort of grasp concepts that we were working on. But when you're able to see it happen, you're like, man, I really worked on that. And it's an incredible feeling. So I think, you know, the most frustrating thing is sometimes it's not going to be like immediate, like within one day or 1 week. It might take a while, but when you are able to see it, it's a really awesome feeling.
For sure. Thank you. Sarah, would you like to share some advice?
Yeah, this is hard work, of course, right? And there's hard things about everybody's jobs. This is particularly hard because generally a nonprofit exists because there is a thing to be solved, you know, something isn't working and how are we, you know, what are the supports that we're adding in to change it? So that itself can be really frustrating, right? In the school district, we want that to be better. How it's frustrating to not have the investment in young people. The thing that keeps me going, though, are the colleagues that I talked about, which it sounds like Cheyenne and Amy are also in alignment with. We have great folks at Heights that I love working with, and also remembering to take time to celebrate those moments. Cheyenne, I think that's what you were trying to get at, you know, so echoing what you already shared, that when there is a win, you know, when the student is sharing with you, or you hear, or you talk to a parent, or you see an alum for us on the streets and you're hearing about their great journey, that is the stuff I try and remember during those really challenging moments.
Amy?
Yeah, I think for me, the hardest part of nonprofit work is making sure that you put time for yourself. I think a lot of people that go into nonprofit work are selfless people at their core, but there's also a lot of burnout in nonprofit, and there is a large amount of turnover. And I think a lot of it stems from people not putting in boundaries for themselves and putting in time for themselves. And so I think I am really fortunate now to work for an organization and have an executive director that like preaches that we need to put in boundaries. We need to take our paid time off. We need to take care of ourselves because that's the only way that we're going to be able to take care of the community that we're serving. And I am a big advocate. I definitely am someone that preaches to all of my coworkers that they need to take their days off and they need to spend time taking care of yourself, sticking to your working hours as much as you can, and like really making sure that you're living a full life that you're enjoying on your own personal time. And then that way, it's the only way that I really believe that you'll be able to fulfill the mission that you're trying to serve, is by being like fully there and fully present. And you can only do that if you take care of yourself.
I love that. Absolutely. So true. I know we all, even in higher ed, we lose sight of that sometimes. So I appreciate that. Absolutely. So many of the students on the calls right now, and even in my colleagues, are always looking for the best resources for students who are looking to do this career. Do you have any advice on the job search, internship search? What title should they be looking for? What's a great entry level point, for our students that are, great leaders of Thon or Lion ambassadors or, involved with, the Lion Hearts here on campus? What should they be looking for, and where should they be looking in to get involved and feel like they're making a difference in that first job out of school? I know Cheyenne's in the search right now, so I will defer to Amy and Sarah. Any thoughts on? Obviously, we tell students networking is number one, and I think that even if I just stole your thunder, Sarah, so any advice would be great.
I'm echoing the great advice that you all give every day, I know, to students, which is to use the great network that you have in front of you, including all of the Penn Staters out there, right? You asked about job titles. The ones that we have for our entry level position tend to end in assistant or associate. So I would look for those roles, and that could be development associate, communications associate, engagement associate. Those tend to be our entry level positions at Heights, and other nonprofits I've worked at. We will post on job boards, right, with Penn State, of course, but also through LinkedIn is a big one for us these days. Indeed is the place where we post. At Heights, we also sometimes post through the Chronicle, although it's really expensive. But most of what we are doing, a lot of what we are doing these days, particularly with our talent department, is through LinkedIn, less on Indeed these days, because we could be a bit more targeted. So that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think a lot of the entry level positions are assistant, associate, coordinator positions in a variety of different departments, and it kind of just depends on the company that you're choosing for. I work for some of the larger healthcare sector nonprofits, so a lot of those positions exist. I'm currently in a very small nonprofit. There is 11 of us, and so to be honest, none of those positions exist yet for us. But I definitely agree. Use your LinkedIn, make sure it's updated, because people will check and they'll look on it and make sure that you're a real person and that you're doing the right things that they're looking for. So I definitely suggest like updating your LinkedIn, getting connected with other Penn Staters. That's how I was able to get into nonprofit at the American Cancer Society. My first manager was a Penn Stater, and now that was a big reason why I was hired at my company now. We are founded by a Penn Stater. One of our bosses is a Penn Stater. So the Penn State connections definitely run deep in your job search. So I would definitely make sure everything's updated and that people know, because there's always one of us somewhere.
Do you have any, start with you, do you have any advice on making those connections and that communication? I mean, We all say that all the time, but I know that it's uncomfortable for some. And where do I start? And obviously, you know, the Alumni Mentor Program here in the college is a great place to get our feet wet for those students who are interested in connecting with alumni and being a part of your career, right? From your first year until you graduate. And I'm hearing mentors are going to weddings now too, so that's awesome. But in that cold call or in that outreach to seeing, you know, I see so-and-so works at, you know, Easter Seals too, and I'm really interested in that. How do you approach that, and how would you want to be approached as a Penn State alumna from our students?
Yeah, I think being thoughtful about crafting your message. So again, I think it's very important to make sure your like your profile is updated, so that way people know that like you've been thinking about it and working on it. I have found in my time that most Penn Staters want to talk to other Penn Staters. They want to give advice. They're excited. Like I meet Penn Staters all the time when I'm traveling for work, and that's all we can talk about. And I think it gets sickening to people who are not from Penn State. But being thoughtful about crafting that message, explain why you're reaching out, and make sure that it's not too copy pasted. Especially if you are going to copy and paste some of it, I think it's fine, but make sure that you're obviously thinking of, you're changing the names and you're crafting that message so it's going to the right person for the right position you're looking for. I think also make it a more general ask of if you can just connect generally and hear about their experience with the company, hear about how they got there. A lot of the times it's not going to be the exact person who's hiring for that exact open position. So more ask a general connection and try to start a call that way, and take that initiative first. It takes a little bit off of their plate of scheduling something with you. So offer to schedule and offer some times as well.
I think the informational interview as a current student is such a powerful tool to engage with alumni. I mean, we all like talking about ourselves, right? And obviously, as Amy said, we all love talking about Penn State. Full disclosure, not a Penn Stater, but I love it. And, you know, I think that's a great time to just really start building that network and increasing your followers on LinkedIn while you're a student. So I have a couple students in my professional development class on the call, so they're probably cringing at this is part of their homework is to do an informational interview. I promise it's a benefit. Cheyenne, any additions? You are doing great things connecting as a Lion ambassador with alumni and taking advantage of events. And actually, Cheyenne just participated and supported our etiquette reception recently. We also had Alumni Society board members there. So any advice, Cheyenne, on communicating with others in alumni?
Yeah, I think, you know, going to those events, putting yourself out there is really important. Sometimes one thing I've learned and that I tell people on tours is sometimes you have to take the first step. Like not everything is going to fall in your lap. Katie tells me that all the time too. That nothing's just going to fall in your lap. You do have to go send that email, go up to that person, talk to them and be able to network with them. Sometimes it's easier for people to just do it on LinkedIn and do it online, but there will be opportunities to be face to face. And sometimes that's a lot more powerful because they might remember your face, remember your name, remember something that stuck out in that conversation. So I think it's really important that when you are on campus or, you know, you end up being virtual, that's fine too, but making sure you're talking to people and making that first step, because ultimately that could be the difference between you and someone else when you're sitting down in an interview for an internship or a co-op or a full-time job.
Absolutely. Sarah, anything else to add to communication skills?
No, these are great. I just have a good story. You know, I had a student who reached out to me 10 years ago, who, you know, shared, and it sent an email. It was lovely, right? Asked, I'm really interested in your story, Sarah. I'd love to hear about it. We talked, we met in person and talked for an hour. The great part of that story is that she stayed in touch. So once a year or so, she would send me a quick email, like, here's the update, here's where I'm at, we connected. And then just recently she reached out again to say, look, I'm now trying to shift my career. I'd love to talk to you. I wanted to talk about Heights. And I would hire her in a heartbeat because she really, you know, she took that first leap, but then she stayed in touch. So the one thing I would add there is just the follow-up is key of the people that you reach out to. when you take that first step is take that second step to follow up and say thank you. And I'd love to keep in touch. It matters.
Absolutely. I think there's a maintenance that goes with your network. LinkedIn is wonderful. Being an automated Rolodex is not anyone's going to know what a Rolodex is, but it used to be a paper with your business card, right? So it's wonderful that we have this resource, but it also allows you to be a presence in everyone and be a reminder of existence, I guess, in the long run, but checking in and maintaining those conversations. And, I throw this out here because even in this idea of a gap year and thinking about further education, you need to either maintain relationships with those here at Penn State and your faculty members for references, or you need to get them before you go. You can do that with law school applications with LSAC. They can upload them. And you can always create a recommendation for grad school too. So thinking about those things before you move on to your next stages in life. What are some, based on the networking and your engagement with students and hiring processes, what are some common mistakes you're seeing generationally happening and through the hiring process, networking process currently? Resume, cover letter, interviewing. Anybody?
I think for us and some of the things that I've seen, I've been part of the hiring process at all three of the companies I've worked at now. I've seen a lot of people make a lot of typos on their resumes that are pretty obvious. Like whether that is just the classes that you're taking, like your major. And I think those are things that are hard for people to overlook. If you format a resume differently from someone else, I think there's a lot of different ways to format a resume, and I don't think there's one exact way that is the right way, but those spelling mistakes, those types of things that we now have like spell check and you have people to check for you, are pretty big red flags for a lot of companies, especially when there are so many applicants. It's easy to just get overlooked by that. I think for interviews, one of the things I see as well is not coming prepared, whether that is even on a Zoom interview, like still dress professionally, still look as if you're going to meet that person in person. And then make sure you're doing research on the organization that you're applying for. The more you can tailor your answers to what they're looking for and to the type of work they're doing, the more you're going to stick out. And again, I think there are just a lot of people that are applying to a lot of those jobs, especially those entry-level positions. So the more that you can do that research, do that the back work, definitely helps you stand out.
Absolutely. I think it allows you to be confident too in your presence and answering those questions. The more you know, there's definitely power. Cheyenne, what advice would you give through your current job search?
Yeah, I think one thing I was thinking about that Amy brought up was sort of how you hold yourself when you're in an interview. And I was thinking just through line ambassadors, and we have in-person interviews, but also the language that you're using, whether it is on your resume or when you're speaking to people. That is something that we notice, whether you're the interviewee or the interviewer, like the way you're talking to people really does have a major impact on your consideration, whether that person wants to work for you or if that person is going to be accepted into an organization. I think, doing your research and sort of understanding what you're applying to is important, but also when you're in that interview, using correct language, tone, professionalism, generally speaking, is really important. So I think, you want to align with something that makes sense for you. You want to align your passions and your goals with an organization, but you also want to present yourself well when you are in that space for an interview. So you don't give off a bad first impression, because this is, outside of an interview, really the only opportunity that they have to see who you are. So I think it's important to recognize the language and general professionalism that you have when you are entering these spaces.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sarah, I'll let you round it off.
All right. Two last things I would add, echoing everything already that Amy and Cheyenne are brilliant with. I if asked about an experience that wasn't so great for you, you know, a job that didn't go well, blah, blah, blah. The thing that trips a lot of our candidates up is not coming to that with a solutions oriented, you know, approach. So, you know, it wasn't my favorite job, but I learned this, this, and this, right? Turning that around. I want to hear that from someone I want to hire. So just being really careful there. And the other thing with, you know, your resume, that is the one thing that I look at. I'd love to read every cover letter, you know, but I can't. So focusing on metrics, those, and I'm sure Katie, you know, Sharon, this is stuff you talk about all the time with students. So +1 to making sure that you're talking about skills and experiences and accomplishments. You know, I want to hear not that you answered the phone, but that you are the best phone answerer ever. You answered 300 calls a day, or you improved this, you know, that stands out to me.
Absolutely. Great point. And yes, we do. Yes. And I think that's what's important. You can't have a results driven bullet point every single one of them, but you can have some. So that's really important to quantify your experience and let us know above and beyond. And it's also, you know, my soapbox of having a transferable skill set. Every bullet point should not just be what you did, but it should reflect what you did in relation to what you want to do or will do in this position, because I can't make that connection for you. So I know as a server that, and I did my time as a server in Chester County outside of Philadelphia, where a lot of these ladies are right now. And I know that you clean tables and empty dishes and rang orders and all of that. But I also know that you problem solved, worked in communication with diverse peoples and groups, and you also handled a lot of crap at times. So I want you to communicate that in those bullet points, training others, working with leadership, upselling, you know, all those things are the skills you want to be demonstrating in those bullet points, not the common knowledge pieces, right? How you excelled. So yes, great point, and a way for me to get that information into this audience. Just a reminder, I am never without questions, but I would love to encourage the students again. And I see that we lost one of our panelists, so hopefully she will come back on. I just noticed that Amy was not there anymore. But please, we have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to reach out with a question about the future and the outcome, the future of the industry. What advice do you have of anything changing or additional skills that we probably should be working towards as we think about nonprofit and human service areas? How is that changing? Where do you see evolving, and what should the students be preparing for in the future? Sarah, I'll start with you if you'd like.
Sure, happy to. The one thing that I think feels different now, I mean, there is always going to be a market in the nonprofit world, right? As much as I would love to wave my magic wand, right? So knowing that, what is different, particularly in this post-COVID world, we are really looking for folks who are strategic. And you can be strategic in your entry-level job, as well as, you know, all the way up to the, you know, the top of the organization. So I would encourage students to think about, how are you in your first entry-level job, right? Being strategic. How are you thinking and making connections to what you're doing that day, to what might help the organization in 6 months or a year or 5 years, you know, and how are you raising that to your manager, to your colleagues in a, you know, in an appropriate way. But if I could hire folks with that skill set, our work would be so much better. So
good to know. Diane.
Yeah, I think just going back to that adaptability piece, I think we're living in a world where people are receiving news at a much higher rate. And, you know, unfortunately, some issues become more prevalent than other issues. So I think it's important. You may like see something on the news and be like, whoa, that's like really interesting. And you may want to go into maybe that career or that type of policy or that type of nonprofit work. So having the skills and transferable skills, communication skills, being strategic, and being able to communicate how you can transfer those skills into a different type of policy or a nonprofit organization, because some, like, depending on who's in the House and who's in the Senate and who's president, a lot of things will be changing. So I think it's important to stay up to date on that, because you never know when your nonprofit is the next big thing because of some bill that's trying to be passed, or if you realize maybe you want to do a different type of nonprofit work, and realizing that maybe you want to move to a different city or move to a kind of a different focus of study. So I think it's important to stay up to date, but also be able to communicate how transferable the skills you gain in undergrad or in graduate and higher education are.
The one thing I want to add, Cheyenne, you just made me think of it, is putting your hand up when you get there, right? And saying yes to opportunities, when there's a committee, or even if it's like planning the staff party, whatever that is, saying yes to those, really leaning in. I think you get just, it's great experience, but it's also a way to sort of see the organization from different vantage points, which will help you. So.
Absolutely. I find myself saying a lot, and no fault to anyone, right? But that your first job is not your last job. And in this world, we know that, it is an entry level of an assistant or associate or coordinator, and salary may be a little bit different than your peer in SMEAL who's going off in finance, right? But this is where we follow our values, and we do what we're passionate for and want to make a difference. What advice do you have? How can we, I don't know, how true do you feel what I'm telling them is, and how does that change? And is it by making a difference quickly? I'm tripping over my words because I kind of know it's true that you're going to start at a lower pay, you're going to work your way up. What do you see a trajectory of a career being in this commonly, and the expectations of time? We also see a turnover happen quickly currently. What is your advice in that area of moving up?
It feels so different now than it did when I first started, and I just reflecting on my current staff, who are amazing, but also, we get requests, 6 months in for a different job or a different pay. So which we as the co-presidents are having to adapt to, so that feels different. I would love, for folks to really spend a couple of years in a job, because I just think you need to see the cycle through. But the nonprofit world is one where you can really advance quickly. I was an executive director before I turned 30, which is crazy now when I'm thinking about it. But the opportunities are there, and you can really grab that if that's what you want early on, much earlier than colleagues maybe in the for-profit sector. So, and the wonderful benefit of being in the nonprofit world is that there are so many places that you can go. There's so many other avenues. So, you can make this a career. You certainly can. You could be in a job for a long period of time, but there is certainly movement there, and quick movement if you want it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And we'll just circle back to say it's networking and getting involved and raising your hand and really being passionate about what you're interested in doing, and doing it well in any job, honestly, any industry. Well, I just heard from Amy, and unfortunately the power went out in Cherry Hill, so she is not going to be joining us back again, but I really do appreciate both Sarah and Cheyenne still being with us. I'm not getting a whole lot of questions or engagement from the students, but is there any other items you'd like to share with our students on the topic before we sign off?
I would say probably just, if you're on campus, take all the opportunities that are here. if there is a networking event and you have the hour to spare, go to it. You never know who you're going to meet. You never know if that's putting your foot in the door for an internship. Last week when I was at an event with the liberal arts, there are people I met and I was like, oh wow, this is like really awesome, and opened my eyes to like, different careers I hadn't thought of beforehand. And now I have people in my network that I can reach out to if I decided to go into that route. So you never know who you're going to meet. You never know what other students are kind of going through the same thing as you. And you never know which alumni are going to be in the room. So I think if there's an opportunity, for a networking opportunity, a lunch and learn, something like this, go and take it, because you never know. You've got 4 years here and you want to make the most out of those. Of course, by enjoying your time, but also building yourself up professionally, whether it's your cover letters, resumes, but most importantly, your network. And it's all about who you know. So I think my biggest piece of advice is, go to those events, because you never know.
Thank you.
We need you. We need great, amazing Penn Staters in this sector. You will make us better. This is such a worthwhile endeavor field to be in. It's been a privilege for me to be in this sector, and I can't wait for you all to join us. So that's my advice. Come do it. And use us, right? We're here. So it's a great networking opportunity after this to be in touch with Cheyenne, myself, Amy, where we can be helpful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. We appreciate your helpful advice and your time, and know that it's very transforming for our students that are both on this call and will be watching the video later on YouTube. So thank you so much.